Moses was born in Egypt at a time when the Israelites were enslaved by the Egyptians. Pharaoh, fearing the growing Hebrew population, decreed that all newborn Hebrew boys were to be killed. Moses' mother, Jochebed, hid him for 3 months, and when she could no longer keep him hidden, she placed him in a basket and set it afloat on the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter found the baby and, moved by compassion, adopted him. Moses' sister, Miriam, arranged for their mother to nurse the child. Thus, Moses was raised in the Egyptian palace but with knowledge of his Hebrew heritage. As Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace, he became aware of the suffering of his people. One day, seeing an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body. When his actions were discovered, Moses fled to the land of Midian to escape Pharaoh's wrath. In Midian, Moses settled into a new life. He married Zipporah, the daughter of the priest Jethro, Reuel, and became a shepherd. For 40 years, Moses lived in Midian, raising his family and tending sheep. During this time, he likely thought his role in the affairs of Israel was over. However, God had different plans. One day, while Moses was tending his flock near Mount Horeb, also called Mount Sinai, he encountered a burning bush that was not consumed by the fire. From the bush, God spoke to Moses, revealing his name as I-A-M-W-H-O-I-A-M, and instructing Moses to return to Egypt to lead the Israelites out of slavery. Though Moses initially resisted, citing his lack of eloquence and doubting his own abilities, God promised to be with him and gave him signs to perform before Pharaoh. God also appointed Moses' brother, Aaron, to speak on his behalf. With God's assurance and Aaron as his spokesman, Moses returned to Egypt to carry out his divine mission. Moses and Aaron went before Pharaoh and delivered God's command, "Let my people go." Pharaoh, however, refused, which led to a series of 10 devastating plagues that God sent upon Egypt to demonstrate his power and force Pharaoh's hand. The 10 plagues were: 1. The Nile turned to blood. 2. Frogs overran the land. 3. Gnats swarmed Egypt. 4. Flies filled the air. 5. Livestock died. 6. Boils afflicted the people. 7. Hail destroyed crops. 8. Locusts consumed what was left. 9. Darkness covered the land. 10. Death of the firstborn. The final plague, the death of the firstborn, broke Pharaoh's resistance. The Israelites were instructed to mark the doorposts with the blood of a lamb so that the angel of death would pass over their homes, sparing their children. This event is commemorated in the Jewish festival of Passover. Pharaoh finally allowed the Israelites to leave, and they began their journey toward the Promised Land. The Israelites left Egypt under Moses' leadership, but soon after, Pharaoh changed his mind and pursued them with his army. The Israelites found themselves trapped between Pharaoh's forces and the Red Sea. In a miraculous act, God instructed Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea, and the waters parted, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground. When Pharaoh's army followed, the waters returned, drowning the Egyptian soldiers. This miraculous crossing was a defining moment in the history of Israel, marking their complete liberation from Egyptian slavery. After this event, Moses led the people in a song of praise to God for the deliverance. Though the Israelites were free, the journey to the Promised Land would take many years, during which they wandered in the desert. This period was marked by frequent complaints and rebellion from the people, who struggled with hunger, thirst, and doubt. When the people grumbled about the lack of food, God provided manna from heaven, a bread-like substance that appeared each morning. When they complained of thirst, God instructed Moses to strike a rock, and water flowed from it. Despite these miraculous provisions, the Israelites often rebelled against Moses and God. At one point, they even created a golden calf to worship when Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving the law from God. In anger, Moses broke the stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments and destroyed the idol. However, after Moses interceded for the people, God forgave them and renewed his covenant with Israel. At Mount Sinai, God established a covenant with the Israelites, giving them laws to govern their community and their worship. The central part of this covenant was the 10 Commandments, which Moses received on stone tablets. These commandments formed the foundation of Israelite law and are still revered today in both Jewish and Christian traditions. The commandments covered the worship of God, respect for parents, and prohibitions against murder, theft, adultery, and covetousness, among other things. Along with the Ten Commandments, Moses received detailed instructions for the construction of the tabernacle, a portable sanctuary where God's presence would dwell among the Israelites. The tabernacle became the center of worship, with the Ark of the Covenant placed inside, housing the tablets of the law. After about 2 years in the wilderness, the Israelites arrived at the border of Canaan, the land God had promised them. Moses sent 12 spies to scout the land, one from each tribe. After 40 days, the spies returned with a report. Though they confirmed that the land was indeed fertile, most of the spies focused on the strength of the inhabitants, sowing fear among the Israelites. Only 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, urged the people to trust in God's promise. The Israelites, fearful and rebellious, refused to enter the land and even talked of returning to Egypt. In response, God declared that this generation would not enter the promised land. Instead, they would wander in the desert for 40 years until that generation had died out, except for Joshua and Caleb. Moses faced many challenges during the wilderness years, not only from external enemies but also from within the Israelite community. At one point, his own siblings, Miriam and Aaron, questioned his leadership. God punished Miriam with leprosy, though she was later healed after Moses interceded on her behalf. Another rebellion, led by Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, accused Moses and Aaron of exalting themselves over the community. God responded by causing the ground to open up and swallow the rebels. Even Moses himself faltered. At Meribah, when the people again complained of a lack of water, God instructed Moses to speak to a rock. Instead, in his frustration, Moses struck the rock twice with his staff. Though water flowed, God punished Moses for not honoring him before the people, declaring that Moses would not enter the promised land. As the 40 years of wandering came to a close, the Israelites neared the promised land. Moses, knowing he would not enter it, delivered a series of speeches to the people, urging them to remain faithful to God. These speeches, recorded in the book of Deuteronomy, reiterated the law and reminded the Israelites of God's faithfulness throughout their journey. Before his death, God allowed Moses to ascend Mount Nebo, from where he could see the promised land. Though he would not enter it, he was given the privilege of seeing the land that had been promised to the descendants of Abraham. Moses died on Mount Nebo at the age of 120. The Bible says that his eyes were not weak nor his strength gone, Deuteronomy. God himself buried Moses in a valley in Moab, and to this day, no one knows the location of his grave. Moses is remembered as Israel's greatest prophet, a man who spoke with God face to face and led his people from slavery to the brink of the promised land. Moses' life is a story of faith, perseverance, and leadership. Despite his initial reluctance, he became God's chosen leader to free the Israelites from slavery and guide them through their journey in the wilderness. Throughout his life, Moses demonstrated unwavering dedication to God's mission, even amidst personal struggles and the rebellion of the people he led. His legacy extends beyond the Exodus. As the mediator of the covenant between God and Israel, he established the laws and principles that would shape the moral and spiritual framework of the Israelite nation. These laws, including the Ten Commandments, form the foundation of Jewish law and continue to influence many legal and ethical systems around the world today. Moses' leadership, marked by humility, deep compassion for his people, and a profound relationship with God, set the standard for prophets and leaders in both Jewish and Christian traditions. Even though he did not enter the promised land, his role as the lawgiver and shepherd of Israel remains one of the most significant in the Bible. He is remembered as a man of faith, described in the New Testament as one who persevered because he saw him who is invisible. In this way, Moses' life stands as a testament to the power of faith and obedience to God, and his impact continues to resonate through generations. His leadership not only delivered a nation but also shaped the future of a people destined to carry the message of God to the world. Now, my friend, I think you know who was Moses and why people honored him. And I would like to thank you for subscribing my channel. Now let's take a break and let's visit to another interesting historical story. May the spirit of Moses bless you and your family.